World War II, one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history, left behind countless scars that will never heal. Beyond the fierce battles on the front lines, there existed horrifying dark corners, crimes that were systematically concealed. Today, we will pull back the curtain of secrecy on one of the darkest chapters of this war, a name that sowed terror, a symbol of ultimate brutality. Unit 731. Hidden behind the seemingly harmless name, the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwangtung Army. This was in fact a research and development facility for biological and chemical weapons for the Japanese Fascist Army. And to achieve its goal, they turned human beings into living test subjects, conducting barbaric experiments that went far beyond all limits of ethics and humanity. So, how did this death factory come into being? To understand the origins of Unit 731, we must return to Japan in the period between the two world wars. The political atmosphere at the time was enveloped by extreme nationalism and ambitions of territorial expansion. The Japanese military elite, believing in their absolute power and their mission to dominate Asia, relentlessly sought new strategic advantages. In this context, biological warfare emerged as an appealing option, a silent weapon capable of causing widespread panic and collapse at a low cost. The man who led and realized this dark vision was General Shiro Ishii, a talented bacteriologist by training. Ishii possessed a boundless ambition for power. He did not see medicine as a tool to save people, but as a potential weapon. After his travels to the West, Ishii became convinced that bacterial warfare would be the key to future conflicts. He tirelessly lobbied the military's top brass, arguing that biological weapons were the solution for a resource-poor nation like Japan to confront larger, more powerful adversaries. Ishii's vision was ultimately approved, paving the way for the birth of a top-secret project. The chosen location to build the central laboratory was Manchuria, a region then under Japanese control. This place was distant enough to avoid international scrutiny and was an easy source for a supply of materials for research. Initially, a small facility was established, but later, a massive complex was built in Pingfang near the city of Harbin. The facility was camouflaged under a completely innocuous name, the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwangtung Army. But behind that facade was a true city of death. Sprawling over a large area, it comprised countless buildings, specialized research wings for mass-producing pathogens, a fortified prison, a crematoria that operated ceaselessly. Ironically, right next to the area where these horrific activities took place was a comfortable residential zone for the staff and their families, creating a chilling contrast between daily life and systematic atrocity. The victims brought here included resistance fighters, intellectuals, and even ordinary civilians from the occupied territories. Upon arrival, they were completely stripped of their identity. Their names, pasts, and human status were erased. Instead, they were referred to by a single codename, Maruta, which means log in Japanese. The use of this term was a deliberate psychological tool. By calling human beings logs, those who conducted the experiments could distance themselves from any sense of guilt. They no longer felt they were harming a person, but were merely processing material to collect scientific data. For Unit 731, the Maruta were not patients to be treated, but living vessels for cultivating pathogens and observation. Once one entered this facility, there was no way out. Inside the heavily guarded laboratories, research was conducted that defined all limits of morality and humanity. Their objectives covered many fields, from pathological research to weapons testing. One of the main activities was studying the progression of diseases inside a living body. Victims would be infected with dangerous pathogens. Then, instead of being treated, They were subject to catastrophic medical procedures while fully conscious. The sole purpose for the doctors was to directly observe and record the pathological changes taking place, an act that trampled upon every medical oath and turned healing into a tool of harm. Unit 731 also conducted brutal experiments to understand the limits of human endurance under extreme environmental conditions. Frostbite experiments were a typical example. Victims were forced to face the biting cold of the Masurian winter until their body tissues were severely damaged. Then, various treatment methods were applied, not to heal, but only to compare the degree of destruction from each method. Similarly, pressure chambers were used to stimulate high-altitude conditions, pushing the human body to the very limits of survival just to collect data. Humans were also used as living targets to assess the effectiveness of new weapons. Victims were taken to open fields and forced to endure tests of grenades, flamethrowers, and other types of bombs. The scientists would observe from a distance, coldly documenting the lethality, turning human tragedy into soulless statistics. The core focus of Unit 731 was the development of biological weapons. They succeeded in mass-producing pathogenic agents such as the plague, anthrax, cholera, and typhoid. They developed sophisticated dispersal methods, such as specifically designed ceramic bombs. These bombs were filled with disease-carrying insects or bacteria and were designed to shatter upon being dropped from airplanes, spreading death over a wide area. The crimes of Unit 731 were not confined within the laboratory walls. They conducted biological attacks in the field, targeting Chinese civilians. Cities and villages became open-air laboratories. Japanese aircraft dropped pathogenic agents on residential areas, causing horrific epidemics that claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of innocent people. Wells and food supplies were also secretly poisoned. This was biological warfare conducted on a massive scale, a crime against humanity. In August 1945, as the war was nearing its end with Japan's impending defeat, a final order was issued: destroy all evidence. A frantic race to cover up the atrocities began. The most important buildings were demolished, documents were burned, and most tragically, the remaining prisoners, the last witnesses, were systematically eliminated. General Ishii and his key staff members went into hiding, taking their deadly secrets with them. After the war, the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal was established. The world expected justice to be served. However, Shiro Ishii and the leading scientists of Unit 731 never stood before the court. In the context of the emerging Cold War, American investigators recognized the strategic value of the data collected by Unit 731. In exchange for the complete handover of all detailed research documents, Shiro Ishii and his accomplices were secretly granted immunity from prosecution by the United States government. The data, paid for by the blood and tears of thousands of victims, was given to the US, while the perpetrators of the crimes were set free. The perpetrators returned to Japan and reintegrated into society. Many of them went on to have successful careers, becoming respected figures in the medical, academic, and business communities, as if the horrific past had never happened. For decades, the story of Unit 731 was rarely mentioned. The Japanese government avoided acknowledging it and became a forgotten chapter of history. However, the truth cannot be buried forever. Thanks to the tireless efforts of historians, journalists, and the belated confessions of a few former members, the veil of silence was gradually lifted. Today, a museum stands on the former site of the Ping Fang complex, serving as a permanent reminder of what happened. The legacy of Unit 731 is a deep scar on human history. It is a terrifying warning of how science, when stripped of morality, can become a tool of destruction. It shows how extreme nationalism can lead people to commit unimaginable atrocities. Revisiting this story is not about enticing hatred, but about respecting the truth and remembering the victims. We must learn from the darkest chapters of the past to build a better future. A future where such tragedies will never have the chance to happen again. Because to forget atrocity is a dangerous step towards allowing it to be repeated.